Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to the Climate Emergency Centre Zoom. We've got a very exciting, interesting speaker tonight. Gareth, I think he's going to have a co-host speaker as well, Daneel, from Solve.Earth, and they're going to tell us about some ways of system change and changing some of the things to more fair shares for fair shares commons companies and a whole host of other things, I'm sure. So without too much further ado, over to Gareth and Daneel to introductions. Over. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Phoenix. Welcome, folks. So I'm Gareth. I'm here to speak about Solve.Earth along with my co-founder, Daneel, and we'll take you through and tell you a bit more about what we do and our vision for the future and what we're up to next and where you could potentially help us and collaborate to figure out our next steps. So this is all about beyond sustainability, and Solve.Earth is a community of aspiring regenerative eco-entrepreneurs. I'll explain that as we go through. First of all, a little bit about why we created the community of aspiring entrepreneurs. There are three big drivers that we saw out there in the big bad world. The first one is that nearly all products and services out there are currently environmentally unsustainable. And virtually all of them need to be replaced with sustainable products and services and new innovative products and services that don't even exist yet, that are, possibly even add to the environment and improve it. So there's a real need for that. The second big thing that's happening out there in globalized society is there's a big concentration of wealth and power. And this isn't a political statement. I'm not coming at this from a right or a left wing perspective. It's simply a fact that a smaller number of people are becoming wealthier and wealthier and gaining more and more power. That is the way that society is structured. And what that means is a lot of people are left out of the decisions that affect them, and they don't have a fair voice or a fair share in the wealth that's generated. So there's a real need for less concentrated wealth and power. The third thing is that we've seen the incredible speed of technology. There are a million anecdotes about mobile phones and the internet and all the rest of it. Everyone's familiar with that. There's some new technologies on the horizon, AI, biotechnology, and beyond, which is really exciting. But the thing about technology, it simply accelerates the system it's in. So if you're in an unsustainable system, technology will accelerate that and cause more negative spin-off effects. The good news is there's a big opportunity to use the power of technology and the speed to accelerate a sustainable system. And we'll talk a bit more about what that might look like. So our mission at Solve.Earth is to simply inspire and support an army of eco-entrepreneurs to build eco-startup companies that are founded on a new regenerative blueprint, which we'll tell you a bit more about, in order to secure a truly sustainable society that will thrive for millennia. A little bit more about us. So my name's Gareth. I'm originally a healthcare expert. I'm actually a medical doctor. It's my first career. And quite a few years ago now, I always wanted to be involved in projects that would have a bigger impact on society. It's great to treat patients one-on-one and do something positive and altruistic for people. But I've always had a desire to scale that up and do a bit more. Of all places I went to business school to do an MBA to figure out how to scale up positive impact, and learned all kinds of things there about how the system works, how to build and lead organizations and all the rest of it. Ended up in healthcare tech in the startup world because I really loved entrepreneurship. And then one day a few years ago, I was driving to work and I always had this tension around, should I jump into sustainability? I really love sustainability. I would take pictures of electric car chargers in the street, and I thought, maybe I should act on this. I really need to do something. And one day I was driving to work and I felt this fireball in my chest. It was 2017 and I knew exactly what it meant. It was this tension coming to the surface. And I thought to myself, if I don't switch into sustainability in some way or another, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. So I did it, and that's when I started Solve.Earth, and I started running physical in-person events like hackathons and getting into sustainability just at the point where things started to really heat up with Greta Thunberg and XR, which both really big movements. We're passionate supporters of and I was involved in. So I'm really a sustainability second career pioneer, if you want to put me in a nutshell. And over to Daneel, tell you a bit more about himself.
Thank you. Hey, hello, everyone. I'll start from the beginning. I come from an academic background of computer science and sustainable development. I started off doing computer science and then halfway through discovered this thing called sustainable development, which I'd never heard of. It was a very recent module, very recent course, and jumped into it because me personally, I loved learning. I was more of a generalist. I loved learning about a range of different topics and subjects rather than specializing into a certain one. And what sustainable development offered on the surface was the ability to learn multiple subjects, but not just for the sake of it, but there was this whole, top-down approach, this kind of holistic systems view where there is all these different moving parts in the world and how to kind of put them together in a cohesive whole. So after that, I was really inspired, went into the real world and said, cool, I'm going to apply myself to sustainable development. I'm going to make a living off of this. So I was freelancing for a while. I was helping small projects, small businesses, specifically eco-sustainable businesses. And it was great, but there was this missing part to it all. There was all these, I was looking for jobs at the same time. I was like, I want to make a bigger impact. I want to do big impact. And there was all these organizations with sustainability roles, but to me, there was almost a disconnect where sustainability wasn't really the core of these organizations or these companies. It was more of this kind of greenwashed on top of the surface. And yeah, I really wanted to work for something a lot deeper. So that's where this concept of meaningful work and sustainability kind of came from. Because in these current jobs, as I said, there was greenwashing. It wasn't true sustainability. It's not the core mission of these organizations wasn't sustainability. There was these bureaucratic hierarchical systems that I think people are kind of shifting away from these days, where power and money is prioritized over everything else and sustainability is an afterthought. And a missing part in sustainability during my studies and work for me personally was that there was energy, there was carbon, but there was this missing piece of how we actually work and function and reward each other within these organizations. And that's why I ended up coming along to eco startups as a concept, because within these eco startups, there was a potential for personal passion, there was energy, excitement, creativity, and really importantly, a space to challenge the status quo. Within these organizations and startups, we could create within them the kind of rules and the way we wanted to work as human beings, rather than being, affected by the kind of organizational structure. And most importantly, where money, environment, and community are all priorities rather than just the power and money. So that's how I've landed here. And I'll pass you back on to Gareth to tell you a little bit more about the wonderful world of startups.
Brilliant. Thanks, Daneel. So I'm going to start with something that's a little bit controversial and say that there's a great power in profit-driven startups. And the angle we're coming at there is that everyone needs to play their part in sustainability. But we've seen that governments and the legal system are far too slow to make the changes that are required. You only have to see how governments around the world dragged their feet, COP26 in Glasgow last year, and really watered down some of the commitments that are badly needed. And then companies and governments are lumping responsibility onto consumers, saying, oh, if you just recycle more, it'll be fine. Travel a bit less, everything will be fine. And consumer behavior change is great because people are changing their behavior, but it's never going to be enough to get to a sustainable system. Not-for-profits do some amazing work, and they have been doing amazing work, still are, but they're always going to be limited in the scale and impact when they're embedded in this capitalist system. And the same goes for charities. They do amazing work, but they're not able to really drive the economy. So what for-profit startups enable is speed, scale, and positive impact, and they drive the economy. Now I'm going to take a step back because I realize it can be controversial. And a little side story here to give a bit of a flavor of the fuller picture. What about the problem of profit on a finite planet, and known as the infinite growth problem? We're clearly coming up against some planetary limits here. How do we deal with that in a profit-driven world? Well, simply, it's a really a big story, but there is no way to easily simplify this. We need to redefine growth and build a new economic system. In our current system, financial wealth depends on material consumption. But really, what's the point of the global economy? The point of the global economy is to provide people a good life and provide for human well-being. It's not for material consumption. So there's a mismatch in what we're doing. We're basically consuming materials to generate wealth under the illusion that that's going to make everyone happy and generate human well-being. We currently measure human well-being in dollars or currency, not a great way to measure well-being either. And then, the question that follows on from that is, what financial value does connection, relationships, play, love, care, art, all the rest of it have? What financial value does a forest have? And of course, the answer might be infinite. The first set, make life worth living. It's not about consumption. And the second, the financial value of a forest or the natural ecosystems is infinite. It makes life possible to live. Without natural capital, we have nothing. Without natural ecosystems, we can't survive. And then a nice example from Kate Rayworth and Donut Economics about rethinking the economy. Stay-at-home mothers are not financially compensated for spending 18 years raising a child, who then might go and work for a global corporate, and the global corporate gets all the skills, education, and experience of that person. So they directly benefit, where the stay-at-home mother was not compensated in a financial sense at all. So the economic system is really misaligned to what we need. So we need a new measure of growth that actually includes nature and well-being. Easier said than done, but we're familiar with the term financial capital. So why don't we add natural capital and human and social capital to a new measure of growth? That would be some way to solving the problem. And for that new growth metric, success looks a bit like this. This is a bit technical on the right-hand side, but if we start to decouple this material consumption and financial wealth and start to measure increases in natural capital and human and social capital, put that into growth, give it the power of finance, what you end up with is economic growth based on natural and human and social capital growth. And in theory, that could enable us to enter a regeneration phase where we disconnect material consumption from what we measure success to look like in the economy. And this will allow us to measure well-being and nature a lot better. And now we can generate economic growth based mostly on increased human well-being and natural capital. And really, that's the only way that we're going to get safely delivered into the next century, given the resource constraints that we're up against. Now, there's a lot in there. That's just to give you a flavor of what that looks like. And there's a lot of smart people out there, much smarter than me, that are thinking how we actually do this and do it for real, rather than have it as a theory. But we think it's absolutely necessary. And this is what kind of took us down the rabbit hole into Solve.Earth and some of the regenerative blueprint stuff that I'm going to talk to you about. That was a little aside. Now back to the profit-driven startups, and then I will come back to the new economic system to give you a bit more context on that as well. And people used to say you couldn't make money in environmental startup companies. Allbirds is a shoe company, started in 2015. Mere 3 years later, it was valued at over $1 billion. They brand themselves as the world's most comfortable shoes, but quite notably, they're made of all natural, sustainable materials, no fossils, no plastic, and manufacturing powered by renewable energy. So a huge success story. Another one is Olio here in the UK, raised $43 million for a food waste startup, which is quite a big deal. 50% of food around the world is wasted. So there's a massive opportunity to solve that problem using the power of business. And if you're looking for opportunities to create environmental startup businesses, we kind of simplified it down into these 3 areas. They're basically 3 areas where nature's being damaged or we are causing damage. The first one is damaging energy sources, mainly fossil fuels. And the solution is 100% renewable energy, which is absolutely possible for everything. And so there's a huge number of opportunities in the energy system. We're starting to see that coming through. The second one is waste production. We currently have a linear economy where materials are created and then thrown away. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we only recycle about 9% of all materials that we use. So we're about 9% of the way to a 100% circular economy. So the other 91%, huge business opportunities to create a circular, zero waste economy so that resources, instead of contaminating the world, are going around in an infinite loop. And then the third big thing is damage to nature and loss of biodiversity directly. We know we're hurting forests and land and water. There is business opportunities to actually protect and restore nature, especially if we create a system that rewards the regeneration of natural capital, as it were. That will become even more of an opportunity in the future, hopefully. But already we're seeing tree planting startups because big corporates need to offset their carbon emissions. So that it's already happening. And then if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they've done a ton of research on where the markets are, 60 opportunities, too much to fit in the slide. And these are all in sustainability opportunities. There's stuff like circular models for appliances and electronics, reusing electronic components and materials could be a big business. Reducing waste shows up as number one in food and agriculture. Then there's some strange stuff like the detection of counterfeit drugs, road safety equipment. There's some big stuff in there that is a bit less obvious, and you can dive into that if you just Google UN Sustainable Development Goals, business opportunities. So, okay, so we know we can build businesses that can actually, become sustainable or beyond it. But how do we turbocharge that? And as I said before, the current system's a bit of a problem. Incentives are not properly aligned. Basically, nature's being destroyed for money, and people are not being given a fair share in the wealth and power generated. So the solution that most folk are saying is, let's just change our laws and our legal system. But that takes forever. It takes lobbying. It takes governments that are benevolent towards these ideas. And they really need to think about the future, but they're only thinking about the present. So the incentives are completely misaligned. What if, as well as using for-profit startups, we also put a new legal system into startup companies, and we create the vehicle for new laws inside the companies we control? And that becomes a vehicle for the new economic system as well. So instead of waiting for the law and governments to change, why don't we change the engines on the plane mid-flight, as it were? And put a new regenerative legal blueprint inside startup companies. What would that look like? It would look like something around a legal foundation that shares wealth and power through all stakeholders, including customers. Very strong legal protections for nature and representation of nature as a stakeholder. And then taking care of people and teams with individual development and the best sort of team communications that we've got out there. Now, the good news is that a lot of this already exists, actually. The co-op movement did a lot of great work for over a century. And the Fair Shares Commons is a new blueprint that's basically a very enhanced co-op. And it gives power and wealth share to all stakeholders, not just workers, also customers, and also suppliers and partners and anyone else you want to be directly involved as a stakeholder in your company. And nature is protected because investors are not the primary source of power anymore. That's the key thing. As soon as you take away investor primacy, nature becomes much easier to protect inside the company. So Solve.Earth is actually incorporated legally in the UK on the Fair Shares Commons. It is legally accepted in the UK and a few other countries, and can be adapted for other legal systems as well. It works in the US and Canada. And once you get there, once you start to build this into the DNA of companies, companies become regenerative. They get a foundation that enables them to protect people and nature. And what that looks like, if it scales up and becomes bigger, is that once you get to 10, 15% of the economy, it starts to generate a regenerative economy. And it starts to reward the restoration of nature and people. And then in 50 years' time, you might see a massive change towards a regenerative society where money is made, but nature is restored and enhanced, and people are given the best possible shot at life. And that completely changes society. And that's what got us really excited about this whole thing, the Fair Shares Commons. And it's pretty mind-blowing stuff. But as I said before, the people are a lot smarter than us working on it. Our partner company here at Evolute 6 generated this graphic. A man called Graham Boyd is one of the chief creators of the Fair Shares Commons, alongside Rory Ridley Duff from Sheffield University. So if you want to look them up, you can. And then, so, you know, this is all like really big vision stuff. So at Solve.Earth, we thought, okay, where do we start? And that's why we created a grassroots community of aspiring regenerative entrepreneurs. And we're really focused on getting people in at the beginning. So even if you've never started a business, you're curious about sustainability and environmental protection, that's kind of who we're aiming at. So we get people in, generate new business ideas, or they generate them for themselves. And then we work with them in the ideation right at the beginning of the process. I don't know, Daneel, do you want to jump in there and say anything, or am I good to go?
I think you've been pretty good. I've got nothing to add.
All right, I'll carry on then. So yeah, we're focused on building a community there, and we're virtual first, physical second. A big part of that was COVID, actually, because COVID came in and upset all the events that we were doing. So we moved to a virtual workshops where we do courses and we meet people in the community. We use an online platform, and we do a bit of education in an 8-week onboarding course and a build-out course. But we're looking to really move into the physical space, and we'll come to that at the end. That's the big next step for us. In the customer journey, they come in as part of a community, and eventually when they're ready, early idea business creation, startup. Then if they're ready to form the company, incorporate on the Fair Shares Commons, and that enables them to scale inside a regenerative ecosystem, as we call it, because all companies will be connected to us through the Fair Shares Commons structure. Makes it very easy to cooperate and collaborate. We've had some really cool ideas coming through the internships or the courses where we get people in the community to go through. A few like Solar Punk video game, which was imagining what a future world might look like that isn't dystopian. We see a lot of cyberpunk stuff and RoboCop and Terminator and all the rest of it. Where are all the movies and books that paint a picture of the future that we could have, right? And the solar punk movement, again, people more creative and smarter than me came up with that. It's just amazing. If you Google that, you get some really cool art and stories and stuff about what the future could look like. So we created a little video game, text-based game, just to see what that would feel like. We've got sustainable architecture, zero waste construction, people growing mycelium to make miniature houses and hopefully full-size houses one day, affordable fresh food, home retrofits, regenerative tourism, all kinds of stuff. And those are some of the graphics from some of the decks that people have made. That was the video game in the top right corner called Acopolis. And that artwork was created by one of the early community members, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, so we've had loads of great projects. We also have a big partner project ongoing right now with some people that saw the power of the Fair Shares Commons. And this project is called Co-Living DAO. And you can look it up at colivingdao.io if you're interested. Basically uses the Fair Shares Commons plus DAOs. You may be familiar with that, you may not be. DAOs are basically decentralized governance communities, kind of built on Web3 architecture. Very, very similar to the Fair Shares Commons. It's just a way of coordinating people and rewarding them for the work that they do. So if you combine a DAO with a Fair Shares Commons company and put it into a co-living community, you can actually own where you rent on day one before you've even spent a single month there, and have a voice in the way that the community is shaped. So this is a really exciting project. It's at a really early stage, but you can have a look at the technical stuff in the white paper, or you can register your interest if you go to the website and click on the register interest button. But that's one example of a side project or a partner project, we should say. as a result of some of the work that we've done here at Solve.Earth. We have a community platform. We use Hilo, which is a community of regenerative communities. It was built in California. It's free to use. It's really nice. But yeah, it's just for our community use. And we use a little virtual studio where you have a 2D avatar that you walk around and you can video chat to people when you walk near them. It's a lot nicer than Zoom, and just feels a bit more social to try and get some of the future of work in these hybrid virtual physical community spaces. So yeah, you can kind of see where we're bringing that back into the mission statement now. So we're building a community first of all, and then we're going to build startup companies built on this new regenerative blueprint. And that is what enables us to be very different from business as usual and move into beyond sustainability in a regenerative society. Anything I missed there, Daneel, before we go to the very last bit?
No.
Cool. So yeah, we want to build our physical community next. And we currently run most of our events and workshops online in the virtual studio. Because of where I'm based and where Daneel's based, Daneel's in Edinburgh, I'm in London, we're looking to start building our physical presence. And we need physical spaces to do that. That's kind of one of the reasons we got in touch with Phoenix at the Climate Emergency Centre Network. And how and where we do this is kind of currently really open. We're not sure, really open to collaboration and conversation around that. And yeah, we want it to be, we're currently also opening up the community to become a space for all kinds of regenerative entrepreneurs. So people with ideas from the DAOs, for example, the really techie people. There's a lot of work in crypto on regenerative finance to try and track natural capital and human capital and reward people for regenerating those things. So there's a lot of techie stuff going on that we don't fully understand yet, and maybe that might be relevant. And there's people doing completely different things and different structures that are like not-for-profit, profit hybrids, people coming in community interest companies. And we're open to all of that because I think in the future, to build this regenerative system, we need all of these ideas to come together. We're not saying that the way we're doing it is the right way or the only way, but we've got some of the ideas we think that are really powerful that could work, and we're linked into some big movements. So we're keen to open that up and become more of a collaborative, open community space where people work together to figure out these things. And so, yeah, that's it. I'll leave it there, and we can move into Q&A if you've got any questions, and then a general conversational chat, and Daneel can jump in if there was anything I missed.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. A little big up round of applause for Gareth and Daneel there. Hey, nice one. Really inspiring, really inspiring. There's a lot of food for thought in there. So folks, if you want to ask a question, it really helps me facilitate. And if you, down the bottom of the screen, there's a reactions thing, and you can raise your hand. You can also stick your hand up. If I move back to gallery view, I'll be able to see you, but it does help. Right at the bottom of the screen, there's a thing called reactions, and you can raise your hand or lower your hand. That really helps to see who's first, second, and third. And I think I need to go back to gallery view. Gareth, do you want to maybe just stop sharing your screen so I can go back to gallery view and see everyone? There we go. All right. Okay. So yeah, if you want to put your hand up, if you want to ask something, I'll just say a little bit there, a little bit of feedback while others are thinking of questions. Or we've always wanted, through Climate Emergency Centres and particularly Space Generators Plan, was to basically advise new groups and eco startups of how they could be more eco-friendly. And we didn't get very far down that path, apart from, you know, having a kind of list of 20 things that, if, say, we got hold of a 20-room building, you could have, you know, 5-8 rooms available for new green eco startups. And then the idea was that there was a list of 20 things they could work through to make themselves more eco-friendly. Who are you banking with? Check your resource supply lines and things, and you know, check that you're doing things in a more ethical way. But we would love to work closely with Solve.Earth. That's a really exciting, you know, presentation, and also just the whole thing about system change. You know, our current system is full of these for-profit companies that are just going to keep consuming the rainforests and our resources till there's nothing left, unless, as Gareth and Daneel are saying, we start to put in these new ways of being and new legal entities and things. Okay, has anyone got a question or some feedback or a comment or something there? Harry in sunny Bristol, over.
Hey, yeah, thanks for that. That's great. Kind of two questions. One sort of CEC specific of, do you think Commons is a good model for CECs? And the second, like, it's a broader looking at like existing companies. Do you think there's a pathway for existing companies to convert, or just that not really work? I can see how it would be sort of cleaner from starting from the beginning.
Yep, happy to jump in there. So the first question is, do you think CECs? Do I think CECs would work best on the Commons format? I think there's lots of different ways to do it. I guess the most important thing is, can we sustain it? Can we keep it going? So any structure that protects it and enables it to keep on going, it is going to work. I think the Commons is a good way to do it, provided it fits that need or that criteria. Because if you're doing it on any kind of fragile structure that can be attacked or removed under jurisdiction or laws that can be easily changed and things like that, it makes it more difficult. But I think Commons is a good way to do it. I don't see why not. Is there any particular element of it?
Not really. Maybe it's something to think about, I think.
Cool. And the second one was one that we've thought a bit more about, which is, can you convert existing companies? And the short answer is it would be incredibly difficult to do it with any kind of sizable company. It is possible. You would need to bring all the stakeholders around the negotiating table, and they would all have to agree. But every stakeholder in existing, you can imagine a big corporate like Coca-Cola or something sitting around the table with all the stakeholders. They're basically going to have to say the board of directors and the investors are going to lose power when we move into this multi-stakeholder format. Good luck with getting them to do that. It's going to be super difficult. But it will be possible in the future, because if and when these multi-stakeholder companies get sufficient scale and power, the theory shows that they're going to outperform existing companies. And when really big corporates see big competitors coming up that are built on a different model, that's the point in time where they're going to go, wait a minute, what's going on here? Maybe we need to change something. But maybe it'll be too late. Maybe they'll get bought over by the new regenerative system. By the time they recognize there's a threat, the disruptors will move so fast that it'll be impossible for them to react. So yeah, it's an interesting question. Much easier to start from scratch, or much easier to start if you're a smaller company.
Okay, going to come over to Dee in sunny Netherlands. So apologies, Dee, I can't read your full name. And then Helen, I think Deb's put up for third. Sunny Holland.
Okay, thank you. It's Dorcas. I was just thinking how to formulate the question. I work together with Yes Delft, which is a community for startups, for specifically product development and product innovation. And these startups, they either have to scale up very quickly to be successful, or they die. And a lot of innovation dies, and loads of effort is just lost, because a lot goes into prototyping and learning. They learn a lot. I'm sure they all do, these young people, but then they end up in corporate jobs afterwards. So I was wondering how Solve.Earth will help startups not to scale up too quickly, to also have a kind of an organic growth as entrepreneurs, and to find, well, like you were saying, the connection with other enterprises to sustain them, to actually help them in their difficult phases. I was wondering how you look at that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, all startups are really challenging, right? It's always going to be the case. It's going to be high risk, and only a few will survive and thrive. I guess the structure from the beginning, because it's multi-stakeholder, it encourages a more organic form of growth because everyone has a voice at the table. It's not, especially if you think about VCs, like venture capitalists come in and they pour money, they pour money, like pour fuel in the fire, right? Because they want a company to grow at breakneck speed so that they can get an exit. One of the key things about a fair shares commons company is it cannot be bought and sold. You can buy and sell the shares, but you cannot sell the company. So the company is free. It's kind of like has the full legal rights of a separate, like a person. So you can't buy and sell it. The company is emancipated, which is really important. So it lends itself, the way it's made, to a slower, more organic growth. That's not to say that it couldn't grow really fast if it wanted to. If it took the investment money and decided to grow fast, it could.
Can I just add as well, I think the kind of network effect of it all, I think what you were saying about the fact that all these things are created and there's these great things that are created, and whether it's luck or external situations, something just doesn't go right, and it's not always because what they're doing is wrong. All this knowledge and all this effort just gets, dissolved into nothingness. And yeah, that kind of network effect can really allow kind of resources, people, capital to kind of flow freely within these. And within this regenerative space, everyone's trying to do the same thing, and moving away from these organizations as, competitive entities into a more connected network effect allows this knowledge to not be lost, and these people to not just, create something great and then go hungry the next day, because they can be reabsorbed into that ecosystem, into, along with all the knowledge and everything created. So I think that's kind of also a part of it that kind of enhances people to not get lost in all the knowledge, not have to reinvent the wheel constantly.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Should we come over? Thank you, Daneel. Should we come over to Helen in sunny Leeds?
Yeah, hi. I think I'm here on a bad day. I'm feeling quite negative, which isn't what I'm usually like. But I've done it in the past, and I've just done it recently on Drax. And when you look at all these big businesses, they are subsidiaries of subsidiaries owned by other subsidiaries, and the whole lot is such a tangled web that somehow that has to be broken. And I was reading up about a company that managed to have a burst carbon capture pipeline, and it ended up, the whole village had to be evacuated, and some people 6 months later are still, got brain damage almost from it. And the company's just dissolved and disappeared. And it's sort of, we have to get around that, because although this idea is wonderful, the cynic in me says the other ones, will come in and pretend to do it and bugger it all up. So I don't know what we do about that. I really don't. And just one other little thing. I liked your presentation, but I found myself starting to see these avatars and was it high-low or whatever. And as an oldie, I am so fed up of new tech spaces that it really, really turned me off.
It's all good feedback on
all fair points. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're really keen to get into the physical space again, to get real face-to-face contact, because I mean, me and Daneel are online all the time on all these platforms, and the one that we showed you makes it slightly nicer to be online because you walk about as your little character. But it doesn't.
It's getting to be able to use it that's the problem. It's just that I don't want to learn anything new. I'm already on like Slack, WhatsApp, and Telegram, and Signal, and
yeah, we hear you. And then Zuckerberg wants us all to be in VR 24/7, working and hanging about.
Yeah,
which is cool for a couple of hours, but not for a whole work day and an entire day after that. So it'd be interesting to see where all that goes. It's mad.
hopefully we get the physical spaces soon and we can, through the CECs, meet up and create some of these great ideas. Shall we come over to Debs?
Yeah, I'm probably going to go. Yeah, I'm probably going to go off topic a little bit, but not, because I noticed. Was it you, Gareth, said that you was into like healthcare and
the doctor?
Right, yeah. So like, how do we like go about making like the NHS like zero waste and zero carbon, because they are huge emitters, aren't they? And huge waste producers.
It's like I've paid you to say this.
Give the NHS more bloody funding.
Yeah. But that's also, it goes back to the old corporate, like it's started out as a good idea, and it is a good idea, but it needs fixing, doesn't it, in every possible way? Like, really.
I'm actually working with the NHS 2 days a week on their sustainability plan. So we've got a zero carbon target for the NHS now. It's net zero by 2040. And we're installing renewable energy systems, heat pumps, all that sort of stuff. It is happening. Big challenge, though. If you think about PPE, masks and gloves and all that, the waste is incredible in that space. So it's going to be a big challenge to turn that around.
It's just a thought. Sorry,
yeah, no,
I know I went off topic. It was like...
it's important. It's important. And I think that someone from that conversation, there's someone I know, Henry, who helped Space Generator funding, who got Homerton Hospital to replace their big boiler, got a big grant from for a couple of million or something. I think I should link him and Gareth. There's a conversation we had there. Just a few points, feedback there from really interesting presentation, really got my mind rolling. So I suppose this is my input here. Put a little hand up. Shocked to hear that we only recycled 9%, 91%. You know, there's a lot of potential there for the circular economy and reuse and things. I heard a new phrase this week, the repurpose economy. I hadn't heard of that before, but kind of what we're doing with climate emergency centres is repurposing vacant property that we can all see in every town and city into a viable, community environmental hub that it turns like into a hive of activity. I've seen them happen through many years. These places become motherships for hundreds of other projects, events, campaigns, projects, whatever it is. So the whole thing really, this is changing the system. If we can encourage more groups to create fair shares, commons companies, the thing, building the regenerative economy, that really is important. We'd love to work with you in any way we can to, to bring in this system change. And there's obviously some very particular points there on the fair shares common thing. Power is shared by all the primary stakeholders, investors, and not investor primacy. That really turns our system on its head, really, because that's what's driving a lot of the profit-driven destroy the rainforest, turn it into plastic products to throw out the other end. So, yeah, really interesting what's happening. There's various things. I haven't got time to go into all of them now. I'd definitely like to play or watch the Solar Punk video game. I've long complained that there is not enough solution stuff out there, and what we want to see. Hollywood's full of shoot 'em up films, but nothing about, regenerative culture, positive utopian futures, and showing people a better world. So we need to focus on that. I'd definitely like to hear more about the co-living and how we create decentralized governance communities. Is there one actually existing at the moment that's a co-living DAO? That's actually, you mentioned about own where you live from the start. Is there one existing already? Would be one question. And how do we get more of these tools? Are they all on your website and we have a look there? Because there's a lot of tools you've mentioned that would be great to find out more on. But overall, really inspired. Let's work together on some things in the physical and CCs. That'd
be great. So just to go through in order, we'd be really keen to do a little collaborative workshop on how we might use the physical space, because I don't really know. It'd be good to open up the conversation a wee bit more. I've just put the links to Solve.Earth and Co-Living DAO in the chat there for anyone who wants to look at it. And you can actually play the Solar Punk video game. I think, Daneel, have you got the link? It's just a text-based game. It's really basic, and it only lasts for about 5 to 10 minutes. But it kind of combines the bad guys. So there's a shoot 'em up element, but it's set in a potential near utopian future. So it's kind of the new future trying to be born and the bad guys trying to stop it. familiar plot line, right? But yeah, so as far as examples of co-living DAOs, there is actually some popping up. They're really new. There's one in the US. Maybe I can try and find it, and I'll pop that link in the chat as well.
Can I just say I've already forgotten what DAO is?
A DAO is kind of like a digital company, but it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And what it means is if you go online and do stuff in a community, you get rewarded for it, and it's usually in crypto. So you earn crypto if you contribute to the community.
Like, oh no, the bot.
I just keep an eye on the chat. There's a few good points being put in there, and do stick your hand up if you want to say more. Just to reply a slight direct point to Harry's question earlier, he said about, would it be good to set up a climate emergency centre as a Fair Shares Commons organisation? I would love to see one of, there's 14 physical centres, there's another 20 teams trying to set up. I would love to see one experiment and learn with this model. We are trying to be something that works like a mycelium network and shares ideas and documents and resources, so each group doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. So we've got a short guide to setting up a not-for-profit or a charity. Unfortunately, we're trapped within that old hierarchical system of if you want to get this business rates model and getting the building as a not-for-profit or a charity. These Fair Shares Commons have got a completely different way of organising, and I would love to see Bristol or another city experiment with a CEC as a Fair Shares Commons. One question possibly back to Gareth and Daneel there would be, who do you register a Fair Shares Commons with? Is it Companies House, Charities House, or the other one? And what was the other point? Was basically Fair Shares Commons. Oh God, sorry, it's slipping through my brain there slightly. But if we got one of these, yes, business rates, that's it. So would a Fair Shares Commons company, because a not-for-profit company or a charity can apply up to 100% of the business rates by filling out form, because they're generally not-for-profit. Is a Fair Shares Commons for profit or not-for-profit? And do we know whether, whether they could apply for up to 100% of the business rates on one of these empty buildings? Over.
So Fair Shares Commons can be a for-profit or a not-for-profit because you've got sufficient flexibility in the design to make it a not-for-profit. It's registered with Companies House in the normal way. All you have to do is submit an Articles of Association that gives all the details about how it runs. As far as getting the full status to get the reduced business rates, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. The legal side of these things that's not my strong suit.
I think you've helped to answer that. If you put in your Articles of Association, you're not-for-profit, I think any not-for-profit can apply for discretionary business rates.
Okay. I think it should work then, as long as you make it very clear in the Articles of Association that you're a not-for-profit and the mechanism that you achieve that through. It should be fine. The funny thing is about a Fair Shares is that Graham, who designed the Commons part of it, describes it as being like a DJ deck, and you can just adjust all the sliders. It can be a for-profit, not-for-profit, or another entity. It can even be structured like a charity as well. It has full flexibility around that, and it actually combines elements of for-profit and not-for-profit, regardless of the way you design it. You get both in one package.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of our hour, but I'm going to ask the group, are people happy to extend for another 5 or 10 minutes? If we want to just check in with folks. Okay, unless there's any major objections there on a 5 to 10 minutes.
There is an example there at Phoenix in the chat of a housing cooperative in the USA that's formed on a DAO. It's called Common Lands. And their mission is to turn 1 million families into first-time homeowners through community-owned cooperative housing, and they do that using a DAO and blockchain technology. So that's quite interesting. That's one that's similar to co-living DAO.
Okay, just typing a reply there. I'm going to ask if there's anyone else from around the group who wants to ask one more question, and if there's not someone jumping, I'd like to ask, I think Sean from Crewe in Worthing, although it might be wrong, might have been John, said something about this. They're trying to set up an eco startup in kind of more eco-friendly tourism. Is that correct? And is there anything you want to feed in about what you're doing or feedback? Was it John or Sean? Over.
I think it might have been me. Yeah, if you look up futurefriendly.org, that gives you an outline of what it is. It's like the concept is TripAdvisor, but it measures not how comfortable your bed is, or how nice the bacon was at breakfast, but it goes into measuring the impacts that the business has on society, and then on the environment and on the community instead, and on the climate as well. So it's about taking all these measurements and facts and information about the business's sustainability and building it into an awards scheme where businesses can win awards. And the public are involved as well, because they actually become the people who verify the awards. So it's a partnership between business and the community, and has a very strong local business emphasis. So yeah, that in short is what it is. And I'd be very interested in, at the moment we're at pilot stage, so if you'd like to try it out for yourself on behalf of your business, either in real terms or just trying it out as as a test, then I'd be very very keen to hear from you.
We'd love to help and support. Also, yeah, have a chat. We'll link up with Solve.Earth, guys. So
you pop that in the chat, John. I tried to
couldn't find it either.
Put it in.
Okay.
I couldn't find it. Thank you.
I think we're going to basically maybe just ask for parting comments from Daneel or Gareth, and then go around the group just for kind of parting comments, say goodbye, or anything you want to feedback from the presentation, or anything you want to just quickly share where you are around the country about your thing as a kind of checkout. Basically, we've got another 5 minutes, so 5-10. So just going over to you guys from Solve.Earth. What are the next 3 steps? How can people get involved with you more if someone's got an idea, or their CEC wants to, have an area where there could be a few rooms or a space that could be for a monthly meeting, or, some of these buildings you might get a, 4th floor, 20, 30 rooms. So there could be the possibility there of meetings, and these 5 rooms could be for new eco-entrepreneurs, startups. And we always do things on a sliding scale. So groups with low money, no money, pay a lot less or free for a certain period, and then gradually build up, kind of thing, and can fund some projects. So over to you guys for how anyone can get involved more for the next stage, and a little checkout from Gareth and Daneel, and then we'll go around the rest of the group. Over. Daneel?
Yeah, dead easy to get in touch with me. I've just put my email address in the chat there, and Daneel's is the same, Daneel@Solve.Earth. And yeah, I mean, we're keen just to open up the conversation and figure that piece of it out in the physical side. Anyone that is interested in what we do, you can download our starter pack on the website. That's dead easy. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, thanks for listening, and we're really keen to collaborate and open up the conversation on the physical side. So anything and everything, we're open to ideas and suggestions. Daneel?
That's second everything you just said. And yeah, I'm up in Scotland. There's lots of stuff going on in England in terms of the CECs. I've not seen, I've heard stories that there might be something going on in Scotland. So yeah, if you know, or if there is, we're keen to collaborate and keen to just get stuff moving. We like doing things. So yeah, and that's me. Check.
There is about 6 groups in Scotland, but we've yet to schedule a kind of coordinating meet to get them together and try and get them working towards getting buildings. But I'll try and chase that up amongst many other bits. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. We're going to just go around the rest of the screen. Anyone wants to do a quick checkout or feedback of what they thought about it, or any quick news from their area? Who wants to go next on the checkout? Over.
Just thanks everyone. Sorry, do you want to go, Ellen? Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's really interesting, and we are hoping to get our pilot up and running for Great Big Green Week, so it would be good to work for you. We're Northern, we're in Preston, so we need some help. We need all the help we can get. I'll pass it on to you, Ellen.
Yeah, so we had some bad news. We went and had a look at the building that we'd been promised was up for 18 months, and they said, oh no, you can only have it until January. And oh, by the way, we've ripped everything out and there won't be any heating, and da-di-da-di-da-di-da, and it's just not worth it. So we are now looking for both a more permanent building, but going to try and get some sort of pop-up shop as well. But it's a bit of a week, yeah. And I'll pass to Harry.
We're sort of heading towards having a business plan, so that stage, and yeah, no actual building lined up yet. Looking good. Pass to Sean.
Oh yeah, we had a building until about 6 weeks ago, and then it all fell through. So we're busy looking for buildings again. But I met a guy today who's offered to pay some rent for us, so that should enhance prospects a little bit. And we thought we'd still be waiting to get charity status, but we got that in 7 days flat from application to response. And that's with 2 sets of email inquiries or questions. So that shocked us beyond belief. Anyway, I'll hand over to who's left on here to go. Oh,
John or other Helen? Yeah, Dorcas. Sorry,
Dorcas.
Dorcas. Sorry.
Yes. Hi. It was really good to hear about the different possibilities that there are for idealists, because sometimes you can feel like a lone soldier, but it's good to know that there are more people that are working towards more sustainable, more regenerative businesses. Wonderful.
John in sunny Swindon.
Yeah, I like the idea, and I want to explore it a bit more, to read through. It seems interesting that it actually goes through Companies House, but it's just a different set of rules. So I'm going to have a look at it.
Okay, and is there one more Helen to feedback there? Not sure. Helen, not in Leeds. Oh, no microphone. I'm in Lincoln. Came here out of interest. I'm going to look into it more. Thank you. I'm the creator of Solve.Earth. So if you have a look at that, it's in the chat. Check it out. Network it. Thank you very much for feeding in there, Helen. Fantastic. Really great. Really got my mind whirring about the, changing the system, and we need to, because there's a ginormous machine of all these private companies destroying our air and water supply for many decades, and we need to change it. So can I ask a little bit of homework from, you might have done it already with your starter pack, but from Gareth and Daneel, we have a short guide to setting up a not-for-profit company and a short guide to setting up a charity. It would be really nice to include within the handbook a short guide to setting up a Fair Shares Commons company, making that as simplified step-by-step as possible for people. And we would love to include that within what the CEC is doing. And we'd love one of the CECs to start experimenting with this. You look like you've got some great, all sorts of useful things there, toolkits and governances and stuff. So is that the starter pack? Is some of that already done?
The starter pack just focuses on how to generate ideas for eco startup businesses. You'll find stuff in the Fair Shares Institute and the Fair Shares Wiki, Fair Shares Co-op, all those things. There's loads of resources in there. It's currently all going to get revamped. So we are working on, I say we, it's an extended group of people. Hopefully we're going to improve those resources and get a step-by-step guide to the Fair Shares Commons and how to do it. So that's a work in progress.
Right. Okay, if you can stick the links you just mentioned into the chat, I'll save them before I beam out. If you guys were up for that short guide to setting up a Fair Shares Commons, what we're trying to do is mycelium network and scale up, and many more groups in this country and across the world could be creating some fair shares commons and a bit more of a sustainable, regenerative, repurpose economy. All right, thanks very much everyone for coming and giving us an hour and 10 minutes or so of your very precious time. We like to play a bit of music at the end, if I can find a track, so people move around because they've been in Zoom for about 8 hours already. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you very much to Gareth and Daneel. Brilliant presentation. Everyone else out there, check out Solve.Earth and let's get involved with creating system change and regenerative economies. Stop recording. There we go. Stop.